All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to a SchoolAdvisor webinar. I have Julie in studio with me. But before I chat to her, just while people are logging in, just a reminder, SchoolAdvisor, at the end of the day, what we as a business, we're all about is introducing you as schools to great suppliers. So an opportunity like this is to hit a big topic with a company that we know is an expert in it that can really help you. So not only do we want to introduce you to great companies, we also want to help you be more effective out there with who you use and information that's relevant. So obviously today is a hot topic on school fees. And also just another kind of reminder from SchoolAdvisor side, if you ever need quotes for anything, from I think last week we had quotes for manhole covers. So whatever you need, all you need to do is go to schooladvisor.co.za, click get a quote, tell us what you need, and what we will then do is connect you with the 3 best suppliers. But I think on that note, today we have one of our favorite suppliers, one of our top rated suppliers, that is incredibly well rated by schools, and they're in studio with us today to help us talk about our hot topic. So Julie from Collect For You, welcome. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us here.
Okay, brilliant. So I think let's jump straight into this. And also, if you have any questions for people watching, you'll see within YouTube on the right, there is information where you can, if you logged in on Google, you can actually write comments. So if you have a question or a comment that you would like Julie to respond to, please pop it there and we can look at those at the end. Okay, yes. So Julie, I think the starting question, and I think why this talk is so relevant, is how big is the problem with unpaid school fees?
Very big and growing.
Is it growing?
Because of the economy, it's growing. Some schools have between 50 and 60% of their parents not paying school fees. 50 to
60% of parents not paying?
Some schools.
Some schools.
Yes, and it's a very bad situation out there.
Okay. You know. And roughly the average of the schools that you're dealing with is like 10%, 15%. You say it's growing. So is it becoming quite a considerable percentage?
Yes, and
okay.
what schools have told me also that this year in particular, their exemption, the amount of exemptions that the parents are applying for has grown due to unemployment, which is also to do with the economy as well. So it's quite bad out there.
Bad. Okay, so I think that's why this is this topic is so relevant. So generally, how does a school normally handle debt collection? And if you say the problem is growing, obviously I think schools are most likely been handling it themselves. How do they normally handle a parent that can't pay?
A lot of schools do a lot of phoning. They'll send letters, they send statements, and basically that's how the school will handle a parent not paying their school fees. Yeah.
Yes. As a parent, I know at the end of last year, I was like, got an email to say, hey, you lost school fees. I was a bit embarrassed, but anyway, hopefully my kid's school is not watching. Okay, so what you're talking about then is actually a very big burden on school staff, which are actually inundated with 100 things to do.
Yes, because it takes a lot. Debt collecting or trying to collect the account is very time consuming. You know, you can imagine you've got to phone, send emails, send SMSs, you know, and then you've got to monitor that afterwards. So a parent will make a promise to pay and then they don't pay. You've got to check, have they paid, have they not paid, and then follow up again. So it's a very admin driven process.
Okay, so we're about to talk process now, but just before we kind of get there, a couple of other questions. It must be very awkward for a school staff member to actually have to phone a parent or follow up. I'm just thinking it mustn't be the most comfortable thing for the schools to do themselves.
Especially when they get to know the child at the school and they get to know the parent, it is very difficult, but it's a job that has to be done. So they will appoint a lady to do that particular job.
Okay, so before we talk process, because I think that's the key thing we want to be able to communicate to the schools is the actual process that they need to take. But Are parents, you say the problem is growing,
Yes.
are parents being dodgy, as in they can pay and they just don't want to pay because they want to go on a nice holiday, or is it legit problems? And how do you tell?
Well, you can't tell. There's a mixture of those parents. So you have got the parents that don't want to pay, and basically they don't pay until you've either gone legal action and they'll pay on a summons. And what I'm finding with some schools that I've recently visited who want to, who are looking at using services of say Collect for You, is that they're not using anybody, and the percentage of non-payment is high, and parents talk. They talk amongst themselves. So the lady in the accounts office will be phoning and trying to get them to pay. Now they're not going to pay because there's no consequences to not paying.
Okay.
They keep getting letters and warnings, but nothing happens. And then the amount of parents that don't pay grow because
Oh, wow.
that nothing's going to happen, and they're not being handed over. They're not.
So there's no social pressure. In fact, there's social encouragement.
Yes, because parents talk amongst themselves, and
you're talking about relatively well-to-do schools like Quintile 5, X Model C private.
Yes, all schools. Yeah.
All schools. Okay.
So.
All right. Okay. So I always hear this term, handing over a parent. When do you hand over a parent, and actually, who do you hand over to? That's what I don't get. Handing over, but where to?
Okay, well, handing over is quite simple. The schools should be handing over as early as possible. But a lot of schools don't like to do that. But they should actually, if they want to increase their cash flow, they should be handing over as early as possible. As soon as the parents are in arrears, they should be handing over. And who to? Of course, to Collect for You.
Well said. We'll let you put that cheeky comment through. Okay, so let's just talk process, because I think that's the nuts and bolts of this conversation. There's lots of schools that are listening. We want to try and give them tips and ideas of what to do and how to do it properly. So process, let's start legally. What framework do the schools need to know about?
Okay, basically from the point of view of school fees, the principal is obliged to advise all parents of the amount of school fees, and also the parents' right to apply for exemption. And there's a form that the all parents must complete at the beginning in either grade 1 or grade 8. They have to at the beginning, it's called a YesNo form. The schools know about this form, and they have to get both parents to sign this form. And that form will say that the principal did advise them of the school fees, and it asks the question whether or not they need to apply for exemption. And the schools know this form as a YesNo form. And that is a very important form because all the magistrates nowadays are requiring that form before you can apply for a judgment.
Okay. So what happens if you don't have that form for a parent?
It's going to be very difficult if a parent doesn't pay with soft collections or with a summons and you need to go judgment, you can't go any further because you will not get a default. The magistrate will not grant you a default judgment.
If you don't
have that YesNo form.
Okay.
The other thing that they need to make sure of is on their annual budget meeting. After that budget meeting, after the majority of the parents that do turn up at the budget meetings, agree on the school fees for the following year, those resolutions, they have to send a letter to all parents advising them of those resolutions that were taken at that budget meeting. And also the exemption process has to be on that letter as well.
Okay. And is that hard copy physical letter? Can it be emailed, put on the communicator?
It can be I always advise them to put it on their website, the communicator, and email it to them. But a lot of schools hand it to the children, and it should also be displayed at the school as well. and as long as that's been sent to all parents.
Okay, and that's
somehow.
obviously to legally protect the school to be
Yes.
able to collect debt.
Yes.
So that's the whole reason of getting that out, including it with the what happened in the budget meetings.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So tip, put it up in front in the school somewhere, and then make sure it goes to everyone.
Yes.
Okay. So then where does the actual parent doesn't pay? Where does the debt collection process start? So I have a parent, they have not paid. Where does it start?
It actually starts, would you believe it or not, right at the beginning at admission stage. It's very important that the admissions ladies make sure they have details of both parents.
Okay.
And if there isn't both parents, if there's only one parent, that they ask the question, where is the other parent? And if the other parent has gone missing in action type of thing, that they get an affidavit to say they don't know where the other parent is, the other parent isn't in their lives, and so on. So all those things need to be put in place at the beginning. And then once the parent stops paying, as soon as the parent doesn't pay school fees, that communication is sent to that parent that you are now in arrears, you need to make payments, and that before the schools hand over, that they do communicate to the parent that, or warn them that they are going to be handed over if their account is not brought up to date.
Okay, so option is school can contact, but they have to communicate that there's going to be a handover process.
Yes.
You're talking about documents. So what documents does a school need to have in place? We've spoken about the YesNo.
Yes.
We've spoken about
the resolution letter.
Resolution letter.
Yes. And then also the statement. And it's very important that when the school are handing over to handing the counter over, that they must make sure that they print the statement before they transfer the account to bad debts. The reason for that is that the magistrates, they're very sticky these days, and if they print the statement after they've transferred the account to bad debts, it will show a nil balance, and the magistrates don't like that. So you have to show on the statement, this is the amount that is due, and then after you've printed the statement, then transfer it to bad debts.
Okay.
That's very, very important.
Okay. So document-wise, we've got the YesNo document.
Yes.
Any kind of affidavit if it's a single parent or only one involved.
That would help to have that. And
statement,
and also your registration form.
Yes.
They want those things as well. So it's the statement, your letter warning the parents that they're going to be handed over. Now, some schools prefer, we do the Section 41 letter, which is a 90-day letter. They give the parent 90 days to make payment and tell them they haven't applied for exemption yet. Now, we do that letter on the school's behalf. So not all schools want us to do it. Some prefer to do it themselves.
Okay.
So either that letter, if they've done it themselves, or if they want us to do those letters, then just a letter or an email warning the parent they're going to be handed over. So we would require that as well. And if the parent has applied for exemption, the letter advising the parent that they were successful with partial exemption and the new school fee amount that they need to pay, we also require that.
And when can a parent apply for exemption? Can they suddenly go, I haven't paid school fees, I want to apply now? Or at what point can they apply anytime?
According to the Schools Act, they can apply at any time really, because if you lose your job in the middle of the year,
yes,
and you can no longer pay the rest of the year's school fees, you need to be able to apply. However, the schools, they like parents to apply at the beginning of the year because it's such an administrative burden on the schools. But yes.
Okay, but legally a parent can.
Yes.
Okay, can go at any time. All right. And then how does a collection physically? So we've sent out our letters. If a school or a debt collection company sends out the section 41, that goes out.
Yes.
How does the collection then actually happen? How do you actually get the money?
Okay, well, what Collect for You do, we believe in communicating with the parent at all times, at every step of the way. So we first start off with telephoning the parent, advising them that they've been handed over. We will give them a copy of that letter, section 41. We email that to them, as well as sending it registered mail. And then that's how the process will start. If the parent doesn't pay, then we list the parent. If we have to wait 3 months before we can proceed with legal action.
By list?
We will list them on the National Credit Register. That's like a blacklisting. That's to try and get them to pay.
Yes.
And if we're still unsuccessful, after that we proceed with the full legal process. So that's the way we collect, and we find it's very effective. Yes. And especially with phoning each step of the way. So when we send when we proceed with a summons, once that summons goes to the court and it comes back from court issued, before we get it served, we will phone the parent again and say, look, we've got a summons here and we're going to have it served unless you start making payments towards the account. So we do that with every step of the legal process. Because we find it works very effectively.
You mentioned something interesting, that formal section 41 letter. Got it. You say you email it and you send a registered mail. Do you have to send a registered mail?
Yes, because according to the Schools Act, you have to either send that registered mail or it can be hand delivered, which means that the parent has to sign that letter that they've received that letter.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
So
it's good to know. So if any schools are doing it themselves, they can't just email it, or someone needs to sign for that. So that's correct. Proof that it's there.
I know that there's a company at the moment that is doing registered emails via the post office and so on, but the courts, that hasn't been proven in court yet.
Okay.
So once it goes to a High Court, Supreme Court, then you can, and it's accepted, then it will set a precedence for all courts to do the same thing, but it hasn't been proven.
So rather just send it registered or physically handed over.
Definitely.
Okay. Within this process, what role does a lawyer play? So especially if a school doesn't have a debt collection company, there's going to come a point, or even for yourselves as the collection company, there comes a point where it now needs to go to court. Someone hasn't paid, they haven't put the exemption, you've given them 90 days, you've called them, you've done everything. When does a lawyer get involved and what does that look like? Okay,
as soon as you proceed with a summons, we've got an in-house lawyer that we use. So we use our lawyer for that legal process. We have our legal team that does the admin part of that. So the lawyer will get involved straight after that. And also it's good to have a lawyer because if after a summons is served, the parent defends, because they've got the right to defend the matter, it's good to have the lawyer in place from a legal point of view. Do we have a case to, does the parent have a case for the defence? If not, then we will carry on. And that's why it's so important that the school follow the process according to the Schools Act. So if that happens, we don't have to pay costs for that.
Okay. And just on that, is it possible so at that point, if you're going to court, a lawyer has to be involved? There's no way a school can just do it without a lawyer?
A school can do it themselves without a lawyer. It is possible because a plaintiff can act on their behalf. But they really need, it's such a minefield, the legal process. They really need to know how the legal process works. And not only that, it's a lot of work. It's very time consuming. The schools really don't have the time to do that.
And just on that lawyer, can a school, for example, the lawyer that sits on the governing body, can they
Yes.
use that lawyer, or do you need a specialized lawyer that knows how to do this
No,
kind of work?
they can use the lawyer on the governing body as well, but
But the chances are that lawyer is not going to have the time and capacity, I'm guessing, to go to court for every
Yes.
parent.
well, that you don't have to really go to court for every parent. It's only if they defend the matter,
Okay.
or if you're taking them to court to look at their financial situation.
Okay.
But the problem with using the lawyers on the governing body is that's not their main source of income. So you will find that they might be a little bit slower than a company like us, because we only charge on success. So
Yes.
we're determined to get the money in so that we can recover whatever costs we've paid, and we can get paid for the work that we are doing.
Okay.
Whereas the amount of money you get on debt collections for a lawyer, it's not as profitable.
Okay. So a lawyer will, if they appoint a lawyer directly, more than likely that lawyer will charge the normal fees rather than a collection fee. So
and take longer.
Yes. Which is a big thing if you're waiting for that money to come in.
The schools want the money as soon as possible. Yes.
And already there's 90 days for that
You
one
have
letter.
to wait.
You have to give them 90 days
Yes.
to sort it out themselves first. Okay.
Yeah.
And just so let's talk fees. I've got 50 parents that are not paying.
Yes.
I don't pay you a fee per each parent. I pay you a fee on
success only, which is also a difference between the lawyer and ourselves. So if you have 10 parents, for instance, that was handed over, I mean, it's normally a lot more than that, but let's use 10 as an example. And out of that 10, 5 pay. We only recover the costs on the 5 that have paid, whereas a lawyer, he will recover costs for all 10.
Okay.
So from a cash flow point of view, it's better to use a company like ourselves, because the school is going to get more money.
And also you're going to work really hard to get the
Most
money,
definitely.
otherwise you're not going to get paid.
Yes,
I like that.
most definitely.
Fee-wise, what are we talking? What is the percentage?
We charge 15% on successful collections on whatever we collect. That's how we work.
Okay.
So, and the parent will pay the parent will have to we recover the legal costs from the parent.
Okay.
And our costs.
Oh, so you don't charge school any legal costs,
no.
But if there is a legal cost, you can try get it from the parent.
We get it from the parents. Yes.
Okay. So the risk for the school is actually, if they are not collecting at the moment, it's losing 15% and increasing their chance.
Yes. So basically, if they're not getting any money and their letters and their emails and all of that is not working, and they keep trying, they should try a company like ours, because you're not getting any money at the moment, and we're not going to charge you. So rather try us and we will collect.
Okay.
Yeah.
And reasonable if a school goes according to the law, hits everything.
Yes.
What if you're following all the steps?
Yes.
Even for a company yourself, like what is reasonable to collect from parents? Is it you're going to get 100% of the money, or you're going to get, what are the odds?
Yeah. Look, we are very successful with our collections. We collect quite a lot. But if a parent the school hands a parent over that cannot pay the school fees. So in other words, they are unemployed, they are living with friends or parents, and they don't have any assets, and they just don't have any money at all.
Yeah.
You're obviously not going to be, not just us, but anybody that they hand over to would not be successful in collecting from that parent. But if you're going to hand over parents that do have the ability to pay, we will collect from them.
Okay. And just on that, so you've got a parent that's come across to you, they don't have any money, they're unemployed. Why aren't those parents applying for exemptions? Or do you advise them to do that? And is that something, if you realize you're not going to get money, is that something that you then tell them to do? What is that process?
The schools don't always like us to tell the parent to do that. So
Yes.
we will ask them for income and expenses ourselves, and we do our own investigation. And then we will report back to the school and say, for this reason, these parents cannot afford to pay the school fees.
Okay.
So we do that way. Now
Okay.
we've got systems set up that we can check, and we will go back and say to the schools.
Okay, so you will actually do research on that
Yes.
parent to see if it's viable or not.
Exactly, yes.
Can schools do that themselves, or
They can, but it's quite a time-consuming, a process to actually do that. But we do that because we want to give our schools a good service. We don't want to say to them, we're closing this file and that's it. We want to give them the reasons why we're closing the file, because that's important.
Okay.
I would say that most of the schools would know why that we can't collect from that parent, I would imagine.
All right. Just a reminder, because we've got a couple more questions left. If any of the viewers, if any of you have any questions, please pop them on. If there's anything specifically you would like to ask, we can see if Julie can answer it. So feel free, just on the right of your screen, there should be a comment. There's the first one through. Oh, no, that's just us asking if you have any questions. No comments. Okay, so maybe if you could just then, Julie, give us a bit more background for yourself. Or maybe even just a step before that. A school wants to bring on board a collection company like yourself. What should they be looking for in a collection company?
I think what the school should do is, first of all, check does that collection understands the Schools Act. It's very important that the collection agency are able to advise the school and help the school with a process of handing parents over. So that's the one thing. What is their knowledge? Are they registered with the Council for Debt Collectors? They have to be registered. And I think using a company like ourselves that also proceeds with legal action saves the school a lot of money. And tracing, do they have tracing? So it's all those things that a debt collecting company needs to be offering. And then just maybe getting references from other schools that are using that company.
SchoolAdvisor, you can check out companies' ratings, the school's ratings of companies. You said something interesting that you want to make sure the debt collection company will actually go the full course. Is that just because parents need to know if they don't, you mentioned parents talk.
Yes.
So I'm guessing if you don't actually take the parent the full process, and I'm guessing as quickly as you take one parents will talk very quickly and you'll see payments coming through.
Yes, it actually changes the culture of paying at the school. That is the important part, and that's what you want to do. So that's what we want to do. We want to increase the school's cash flow, change the culture of paying, which is strange, I suppose, because that means less parents will be handed over later on. But if we can do that, and then the schools will then give us a good reference for another school, and we can help more schools.
Okay. Interesting. What schools do you service presently?
Well, we're here in Stellenbosch at the moment. We service Stellenbosch High School, we service Rhenish Girls High School, we service Rhenish Primary School, Port Ruis in this area alone. We've got quite a number of the public fee-paying schools all over, Camps Bay, Pinelands High, etc.
Okay. All right, you've mentioned my kids' school, so I better get paying. We've had a couple of questions come through. So Malstradam asked, for schools that are not keen to go the legal route, is using a debt collection agency still a good option to contact parents from an external source? And they may take this more seriously, than the bookkeeper kind of contacting them?
Most definitely. A third party is always the way to go, because if you're trying to collect the school fees yourself, they don't take you seriously. As soon as you involve a third party, then they think, oh, hold on, this is more serious. There's more consequence to not paying the school fees, and they will pay school fees. Yeah.
Okay. Just another question which ties what we spoke about in the beginning, also from Nikita. Please elaborate more on the yes/no form. What is included in this form? So maybe if you could just explain the form. Is it a government form?
It's a government form. It's from the school from the government education department.
Okay.
It's a form that it says there that the principal is obliged to advise the parents what the school fees are. Now, the reason why they call it a yes/no form is because there's a yes/no answer. Where the form will ask, were you advised, or did the principal advise you of the school fee amount?
Okay.
You know, and it will carry on to say about are you aware that you can apply for exemption, or if you're right to apply for exemption? And it asks the question, would you like to apply for exemption? So the parent will tick the yes or the no block.
Okay.
That's basically it.
So if a school doesn't have that form,
if it's a public school,
yes,
fee-paying school, they need to get that. They can get it from the education department.
Okay.
We also have a copy of it, so they can email us and we can forward it on to them.
That then obviously doesn't apply to private schools.
No.
Okay.
No.
So private schools, what we've been talking about is government schools.
Yes.
Private is, I'm guessing, the same. You'd have to issue summons, but it won't have as many. You still need to send the 41 letter.
No, you don't need to send a 41 letter for private schools.
Okay.
Private schools, you just need to send a letter advising them, warning them, or a Section 29 letter, I suppose they call it, from a legal point of view, advising they've been handed over and they have 10 days in order to pay to avoid legal action being instituted.
Okay.
So that's all that would happen.
Okay.
And then we can proceed. We don't have to wait 3 months.
Yes,
You
so it's
can
a bit
proceed
quicker.
Yeah.
So private schools have a benefit.
Yes.
They can do the process a lot
Yes.
quicker. Okay,
Yes.
that's good news for the private schools. And
Yes.
Collect for You can help private
Yes,
schools as well.
we can most definitely help private schools.
So more questions. This is a good one. Sorry, all of the questions are good ones. I like this one. What is the general exemption percentage that you would apply to the fees? So roughly, what do you think is a fair percentage of parents at the moment for exemption? Is it, sorry, our lights go off automatically if we don't move in the office. They're back on. So what is roughly, what do you think for a kind of a quintile 5 school? What is it, 10%, 5% that should be applying roughly at the moment, in your opinion?
I'm not sure whether this is what they're asking, but I can't give them what the correct exemption amount is. There's a formula that's given from the education department, and they follow that formula.
But maybe another way of asking, and I think if I'm getting this right, like in your opinion, with the schools you deal with, roughly how many parents, on percentage-wise?
How many exemption? I know I visited a school. I think it varies from each school and each where the area of the school. But I was at a school recently, and they said out of, I think it was 600 parents, 130 had applied for exemption.
And it's exemption of everything, or?
No, the way exemption works basically is depending on the school fee amount and depending on the parent's income. So there's a formula from the education department that calculates whether they qualify for full exemption or partial exemption, or they don't qualify. So it all depends on the parent's income or the household income and the school fee amount.
So that can any from 20% to 100%.
Yes.
And it's completely dependent.
10, 5%, 2%, right through.
Okay.
Yeah.
And benchmark, roughly, what's the average at the moment? Are people on 100% or 50%, roughly speaking?
I wouldn't be able to tell you that because each school is different. Again.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we've got another question here. I think I know the answer. Is the exemption application only applicable to government schools?
Well, there's an exemption process that has to be followed, which is applicable to government schools. But I think from a private school, they can also use a process like that, where they want to help parents over a sticky period, for instance, but that would depend obviously on the governing body of that private school, which they would.
Okay.
Yeah.
So exemptions is a government
yes,
school,
yes.
not private. Private would need to come up with their own policy
Yes.
if they're going to
Yes,
allow partial payments for a period or catch up or not.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So in summary, private to government, different.
Yes.
Private schools, it's actually easier in the sense that you can issue a letter and 10 days later kind of proceed to legal.
That's correct. And the other thing is, remember, in a private school, they don't, the child, they can ask the parent to remove the child from their school.
Yes.
Whereas in a public school, you cannot remove that. Once the child is in the school, whether the parents pay school fees or not, the child cannot be asked to.
So I haven't paid, I haven't done an exemption,
yes.
You can't remove my kid.
No, we can only, the school, the only way to get the money from you, not paying, is to hand you over to a company like ourselves.
Okay. Just a question, because it's going to be the last question, I think. One of the schools in the comments was asking about they, as a school, don't want to hand over anyone. In your opinion, do you think that's a wise move, not a good? Because I understand a school doesn't want to be seen, as the meanie. So I know schools want to keep a level. They're there to support the community. How do they? That minefield of getting their money, not wanting to go the legal, should they be going the legal? Just any thoughts in closing on that?
Personally, I think they should. But it depends on, I don't know where that school is and what their rate of unpaid school fees is at the moment. But if you've got any school fees that are not paid and the parent are not paying, I don't see why you can't hand that parent over to a company like ourselves to help the school, because at the end of the day, you could end up with a situation when, as I said, we've got some schools that we know about that have 50 to 60% of parents not paying school fees. In my view, how that school is going to pay the bills and the teachers without handing those parents over and changing that culture of non-payment in order for the school to survive, to do it themselves, I think is virtually impossible.
Okay. I also think maybe handing it over, in a way, it's easier because the school can just say, our process is we've appointed a company, they handle, because then they can also remove the emotion. Like, hi, sorry, it's not up to me. We've appointed a company to help us.
Easier.
So it can keep the relationship while handing over.
That's correct. And also, just to add to that, not all debt collection companies are rude and they don't come across aggressive. We try not to come across aggressive, that we try and negotiate with the parent, because yes, there are parents, as you said, that try and dodge, but there are parents that it's legit. They really are struggling financially. So we try and help those parents to negotiate a repayment amount that's more affordable to what they can pay. So
and maybe let's end with that, Julie. Just in a nutshell, collect for you. I think you've given us a lot of your time, so we can give you 30 seconds just to tell us what makes you different. I know I've seen some amazing reviews about you on SchoolAdvisor. Why would a school want to choose you?
I think they would want to choose us because we'll increase their cash flow. That's very important. And also, I think the relationship that we build with all our schools is very, very important. And that the schools that we collect on behalf of at the moment, they trust us.
Yes.
And they appreciate the fact that we actually bring money in to help them run the school, basically.
Also, one thing just from my side listening that I quite like was the fact that whenever I think debt collection, I think whatever, negative, but I think just what you were saying, that you real people, going to real people, trying to make a relationship. So I think that's actually quite nice. It's I think for me it removes the stress of the process.
And remember, we're dealing with parents who've got children at that school. So it's very important.
Okay, great. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. What we will do is we will send out a link of this video. What we'll also do is just send out a link for Collect For You, where you can find out more information about Collect For You. But if they want to contact you just to find out more, can they email you?
They can email us. They can email info@collectforyou.co.za.
Okay.
And
the 4 is a 4 and the U is just a U.
yes.
All right.
Brilliant.
Awesome. Julie, thank you so much.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate your time.
Yes. Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, everybody. We'll keep you updated about our next webinar that's coming up. We're going to be talking about AstroTurfs and the legal requirements and what you need to do before you even think about putting in an Astro. So we'll keep you updated. And then once again, any quote requests, please let us know. Whatever you need, we can help connect you with 3 amazing companies. Thank you, everybody.